Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to another question and answer session number 11. I've got 30 questions here provided by you guys. It breaks down into 3 categories: music, 13 questions, channel related, 7 questions, and even some personal questions, 10. I think it's the most I've ever gotten asked in terms of personal questions, but I'm going to break it all down. I'm going to discuss it all here with you guys, and we'll do that in just a moment. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like. All that stuff will really help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, if you turn on notifications, you're going to stay up to date on really cool episodes just like this with question and answer session, where I pretty much tackle anything here. But if you are new, let me just catch you up a bit regarding my channel. Also the fact that I am a licensed registered architect in the state of New York. It's a reason I always wear this architect shirt here, which you should pause and read if you've never stopped to read what that says. I always found it very funny. But I have a day job. I am an architect. I work professionally, and then music is my passion. Though I started collecting 34 years ago in 1989. At least that's the date that I consider the start of it. Even though my music interest and getting albums and things of that nature go further back than that, the point that I really started collecting. And there's actually a question this time regarding: when did you decide that you had a collection? What kicked that off for you? And I'll talk about that a bit more later on. I have over 12,000 CDs in my collection, over 350 box sets, and over 300 records. So lots and lots of music there, stuff for me to draw upon, but that gives you a little bit of background, catches you up on me. We'll move into the questions now, and of course, as always, I'm going to do my best to pronounce everybody's name correct, but I'm never that great with names, as you guys know, so hopefully I won't butcher them too bad here. Kicking off with music related questions, 13 of them, and we're going to start with Walter Sobachak. He asked, how do you keep track of all your CDs and vinyl? And I get asked this question a lot. Recently, I had made a video, sort of like the 10 most asked questions that I get. This one here probably is the one I actually get asked the most, which is why I wanted to kick off with it. I don't have a list. A lot of people ask if I have it up on Discogs, and I only have about 350 of my CDs and records scanned up there. And it was just one of those things that takes too much time. Probably will never complete putting all 12,000 CDs up there. So how do I keep track of it? It's all right here in my head. And for the most part, that is good enough for me. I do go through my collection a lot. I don't leave things, boxed up and put away that I don't get into. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later based on another question. So for me, it is always pretty present right there in my mind. I'm able to pull from that, and that's just how things are regarding it. I have occasionally duplicated the purchase of something, but usually that has to do with it being an alternate album cover or some other sort of reissue related item that when I get home, you realize, oh, it's actually the same album. It's got a different title, a different album cover, that sort of thing. And I've probably only done that a handful of times, so it's not like it happens all that often. Okay, PJH Vols asks, how did your music collection start? So we're going to get right into this. And at what point did you realize you have a collection? So I always sort of pinpoint the moment in 1989, around the time of when Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood came out. I had just moved from Pensacola, Florida down to Clearwater, Florida. Didn't know anyone, didn't have anything to do, was in a brand new, town, neighborhood, all of that. But just up the street was a record store, Turtles Records and Tapes. And I walked up there. I had never gone and bought my own music or anything of that nature. I don't even know why I chose to do it really, other than I was enjoying music already at that point. And I went up there and I bought Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood. And from that point, I was hooked. It was perfect for me, and I immediately wanted more music. So from that point, that's when I considered my collection actually starting. And when did I decide that I have a collection? I had this rectangular cassette rack that hung on the wall, made of wood. It held 100 cassettes. When I filled that, and I eventually had to start finding other places to stack and store my cassettes, I realized I had a collection because none of my friends had 100 cassettes. And boy, did I think that was a lot at that time. Now look at me, 12,000 CDs later, and I'm still going. All right, Anthony Genovese asks the question, who turned you on to music, and what album was it? So I give that credit to my older brothers, 3 years older than me, Colin. He let me borrow his Def Leppard Pyromania cassette. He handed down to me an old Walkman that he had, and he had given me a Hall & Oates album, which was okay, but it didn't do anything for me. And I, at the time, actually not even sure why, I think I knew the song Photograph, and so he lent me the cassette, and that kicked things off. So I really consider me sitting down and listening to Def Leppard's Pyromania, which was a year or two before the 1987 Hysteria album came out. I don't really remember exactly when it was, but I want to say it was at least 1986, could have been 1985, because I remember asking my brother whether the band was still together since the album had come out in, 83, and they hadn't done anything. And he said, oh yeah, they're still around, but I just couldn't fathom how years could go by without an artist doing anything. Of course, a short time later, they released Hysteria, but I was already a fan by that point, so I was on it from the get-go when that album dropped. And that was a cassette that my mom brought home for me. I didn't buy Hysteria. First cassette that I actually bought was Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. That's the first piece of music that I bought with my own money. So maybe that's what kicked it off. I don't know. But I didn't run out and immediately start buying more albums in 1987. It was kind of a slow grow from that point forward. Okay, Warman asks, what rock and metal albums would you introduce a new generation to? So I think this person mentioned that they're in their early 20s. And I would say, if somebody who didn't know anything about music, I would start with these 6 albums here. Of course, if you know these 6 albums already, I would turn you on to a whole different slew of albums, but I'm going with the fact of introducing a new generation to music. Kids that are growing up today that don't know anything about the classic rock sounds, I would start with Black Sabbath Paranoid from 1970. Yes, I would skip over the debut. I think this is a far superior album. Now, a lot of these albums after this are going to be ones that I would say, and I've even made videos on, that I think I never need to hear them again because I think they're so worn out. But if someone had never heard these, I would tell them immediately to get Led Zeppelin 4 from 1971, featuring, of course, the classic Stairway to Heaven. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon from 1973, just an utter classic, the longest running album on the Billboard chart, over 800 and some weeks. It's been on there. It's 14 million plus selling in the US alone. AC/DC, Back in Black from 1980, the hands down greatest rock album out there, I think. Everything on here is a hit. Perfect thing. I think it needs to be in everybody's musical collection. The actual greatest rock and roll album ever, though, Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction from 1987. I know a bunch of you guys are freaking out at this moment, but I will stand by that till the day I die. I think this is the greatest rock and roll record ever. So, of course, that has to be in there. And then Metallica's Black Album from 1991. So, giving you a nice little cross-section of 21 years through these 6 albums, with the kickoff of the advent of heavy metal with Black Sabbath, moving through some major killer straight up rock from Zeppelin into some prog with Pink Floyd. You get killer 3-chord rock with AC/DC and the Guns N' Roses, growing and building on what the Rolling Stones set forth in the 60s and 70s, and then Metallica taking thrash metal to the top of the platform. I think those 6 albums are classic, critical albums that I would say everyone needs to own in their collection. And if you've never gotten into music and you're looking for a music shoe-in with rock and metal, those are the albums for you guys. Okay, what was your first concert and your latest concert? So, first concert was AC/DC with King's X. I've said this before in some other Q&As, but when I went to that show, my mom and dad actually didn't know that that was my first concert. They thought they were taking me 3 months later to a Poison concert, which I absolutely loved, that being my first concert. But this one came up where a friend of mine had tickets. I slept over at his house and I went to it. And from every bit of that was just an absolute killer show. Concerts like that just simply don't happen anymore. Everyone was on their feet. Fists were in the air the entire time by everyone. People were singing. Nobody was talking during that other than to freak out to their friend next to them and go, oh my God, this is so great. People just didn't talk during shows. They were into them back then. And I wish today's music was like that. Latest concert I went to is Deep Purple, and I actually did it right before the pandemic. And yeah, unfortunately, I haven't really been to see any shows. I think I might have seen something here or there, but real concerts that I've been to, Deep Purple was the last one, and that one blew my mind. I've got some footage posted on this channel, a couple of videos from that concert, and I was front row for it, so forget everybody behind me that was sitting down and just not into it and too busy talking to themselves. I was right there in it with the band, and it was so very cool. Okay, William Tyndale asked the question, what solo project from Kiss members are your favorites? So, hands down, I've got to go with Ace Frehley, and I really like his current albums that he's done. All three of these, absolutely fantastic. I think he is the one member of Kiss that his material has always sounded like Kiss and is just strong from start to finish on it. I will say though, I also really like White Tiger. This one was really good here, featuring Mark St. John. A little different than Kiss though, but just a great album nonetheless. And maybe the single best album, because I can't really put my finger on one for, say, Ace Frehley. I do really like the Paul Stanley album, Live to Win. To me, this is just a long lost Kiss album that should have been a Kiss album. They didn't want to make it at the time, so he made a solo album, and of course that turned things around, and the band went and made 2 albums after that. But I do very much love that. Now, tying into that, Jason C. wants me to rank the 4 Kiss solo albums. So, coming in last place, and as much as I've always wanted to enjoy this album, I just don't think it is that interesting. It doesn't hold my attention. The Paul Stanley album. Then the next one would be Gene Simmons' album. First one I actually bought was this one, and I do like it, but it's just not as menacing as I thought it would be from him at the time. A surprising album that I ended up liking, and this might have been the last one that I bought, Peter Criss's solo album. I absolutely love this. This is very soulful, funky, R&B flavored, rock and roll, almost disco flavored, but it is good. It's very different than Kiss material, but I really like it. And of course, the greatest one, the Ace Frehley album. This one here sold the most, had the only single that did something off of it, New York Groove, and most sounding of the Kiss albums, solo albums that came out sounding like an actual Kiss album. Okay, October Library 2017, which I think is an interesting name. I'd love to hear the story behind that. What bands jumped the shark for you? And if you don't know the phrase jump the shark, that is when, actually comes from the TV show Happy Days, where the Fonz, who was the really cool guy, was water skiing and jumped over a shark. And it's just that point where something becomes so silly, you're no longer interested in it. Kind of just is done for you at that point. So for me, that is Motley Crue. I was head over heels getting Dr. Feelgood, buying all their stuff from the back catalog. That was my favorite band, and I absolutely loved them until during the 1994 album, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. So even though they changed singers from Vince Neil to John Corabi, that is not the reason that I think they jumped the shark. It's actually Quaternary, where they each did a solo song, and we get the Tommy Lee song Planet Boom on here. We get Bittersweet on here. Just songs that didn't sound at all like Motley Crue. Now, I understand that was the intent of this, but it really kind of made me question them, because I was sort of, wait a minute, I want to hear Motley Crue, and this is not Motley Crue sounding. And I wasn't yet, I guess, versed enough in the styles of music to be able to say that's cool and that's okay, that's your influences, whereas I could probably do it a little better today. But aside from that, I was still a fan, and then Generation Swine came out. And I tried and I tried and I tried to love this album, and I wanted to, and I was happy that Vince was back. But beyond the song Afraid, I just thought the band was trying too hard. And once I got towards the end of this album with songs like Rocket Ship, that was sung by Nikki Sixx, and the worst one of all, Brandon, sung by Tommy Lee, a song about his son, it just is no good in my opinion. And I really hesitate to jump on that bandwagon, but I really, really dislike those songs. The fact that they had other people sing on this album, the fact that they completely changed their sound, and none of it is all that interesting, just downhill from there. They made a little bit of a comeback with New Tattoo. I love that album. And I even like Saints of Los Angeles. But just kind of every step that the band takes, from kicking out Mick Mars, to returning after saying that they were retired, to bringing John 5 in, someone that in my opinion does not fit the style of the band and should not be there, although he is a great member, to the most recent thing, the battle back and forth between Mick Mars and now the Cruiseum and online museum. It just is all contrived in my opinion. And again, I want to say I love the band, but I feel like a long time ago they jumped the shark and they're no longer my favorite band. A long time ago I moved on to Pink Floyd around 1994, and they've continued to be my favorite band ever since. Okay, let's get back onto a happier topic here. Jose Vincent Alonso asked the question, where do you think your music obsession came from? And I do want to credit a little bit to my older brothers, both of which were into music. My older brothers would listen to records, Journey, the album Frontiers, Escape, even ABBA was thrown in there. Lots of cool stuff along those lines that started my early music listening. My older brother Colin, the one that lent me the Pyromania cassette from Def Leppard. I also was really into cassettes that he had by Quiet Riot and Twisted Sister. So those guys kind of helped. But I think my obsession with music actually was from a childhood friend, Chuck Turner, who I went over to his house. He was a friend I'd met from church. If you don't know, my father is a minister. So I went over to his place after meeting him from church, hung out with him, and he was a big music fan because his father was a music fan. And so he turned me on to Led Zeppelin 4 and a lot of other classic artists that I had never heard before, Aerosmith being one of them at that time. So he was a collector, so the both of us together would go to music stores. That was our favorite thing to do on Sundays together after church, and dig up stuff. We went to record fairs and all kinds of different record stores at that time. So I think I would really credit it with him. But because music is one of those things that you can do by yourself, you can do as a solo thing, I think that it's something that I grew on my own ultimately. But kicking it off, I got to give some credit out to my older brothers and my friend. But ultimately, it's something that just was an internal thing that because I could do on my own, I continue to really enjoy. Okay, and he also asked the question, how often do I get into the white boxes? And so these white boxes that are in I have these walk-in closets that they're in, and you saw them from old videos when I lived in New York and I didn't have these shelves to have a lot of it out, because there's, I can't even recall now, I don't know, is it 3,500 or 4,000, something like that, that's out on these shelves. So of the 12,000, there's still like 6,000 of them put away, yes. I get into them all the time. That's the bottom line. They're set up in a way that they're easy to access. They're organized by genre. And for this video alone, in order to pull out, Kiss has its own box, so I had to dig into that. I have individual cardboard ones that hold different bands. So Motley Crue has its own box. Metallica has its own box. So those I had to go dig into to get and pull out to ready for this video, but I get into them all the time. They don't stay dormant. I get into my entire music collection all the time. Next question from Michael Jones. How do you decide which albums to buy on CD versus vinyl? It's actually not that hard at all. Anything and everything that I can get on CD is the first choice. If it's only being released on LP, I will buy it on LP. If I'm at a record fair or something, or I find it on vinyl and I look up and it either one was never issued to CD, I'll buy the vinyl, or two, if it's really expensive, like $50 to $100 for the CD, I will buy the vinyl. But first and foremost, I'm going to buy CD. And as you guys know, this is a CD channel. Okay, Paolo Faglio, and I apologize if I butchered that name. Would you ever make a video on new metal, metalcore, black metal? And this person listed a ton of different, more modern black and death metal styles like that I'm not listing here. But of those, one, I'm simply not interested in any of them. New metal, not so bad. Metalcore, not interested in. Black metal, death metal, anything along those lines. I can't get into the vocals, so I'm just not into it. Some of the music is all right, but I really can't get into it. Sepultura is about as heavy as I go in the vocal range. But I also don't like the modern, down-tuned metal sounds from these new metal bands, and I also don't like the ones that mix in rap with it. There's a few songs here or there. I mean, I can get into it, but it really doesn't move me. So I've just never purchased any of it to have in my collection. Thereby, I'm not going to make a video on it because I'm not into it. I simply don't make videos on this channel about things that I don't like. Okay, and Darren McClellan asks, what album do you think has the perfect marriage between producer and artist? And maybe that was meant to be albums plural. I don't recall, but I looked at this. I was very hard to come through, and I thought about all different ones. At first I thought about like Meatloaf albums, and then realized that Todd Rundgren was producer, not Jim Steinman, although I think he produces later on. But I just thought about a number of them, and there's some great albums out there like Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, but I don't really think Mike Clink had a lot to do with that. I've listened to the demos, and it's very close to the stuff that turns out on it. Robert John Mutt Lange is a producer who, when he gets a hold of an artist, completely elevates them and steps them up. Everything he did with Def Leppard, I think case in point, what he did with country artist Shania Twain. So I think he is one of those producers that is always becomes the fifth or sixth member of a band and is key. Some albums that I find to be amazing, and I was able to go in and find one producer that worked on many different albums that are actually my favorite by those bands. So whereas Robert John Mutt Lange did work with AC/DC and Foreigner and a number of others that I do like, I went with Bruce Fairbairn. And Aerosmith's Pump, I absolutely love. I mean, he did a number of albums with Aerosmith and with AC/DC. The Razor's Edge, fantastic. Favorite Poison album, Flesh and Blood, totally elevated the band up from their party rock roots into something where they could be proud and respectable in terms of the musical styles they were doing. And then Bon Jovi's New Jersey, same sort of thing, just lots and lots of great stuff. So I've looked back at what these bands did before versus what they were able to do with Bruce Fairbairn. I also think what he did with Yes and a number of other artists, absolutely amazing. So I think hands down, probably one of my absolute favorite producers for what he churned out, Bruce Fairbairn. But I do really like Robert John Mutt Lange as well. All right, channel related, 7 videos here. Big Dave asked the question, how do you find time to make videos and post them every day? Well, I recently did make the video, the behind the scenes footage, what goes into making a video, so you can see that, which of course I talked about in there were some of these videos. This one in and of itself too took a couple hours to put together, because not only did I have to tack that on at the end of the other one and prepare for that, but I had to collect all the questions. And as I collected the questions and responded to each of your posts and then wrote them out in here and then thought about what it is that I was going to respond with, that takes time. So these videos take a couple hours to prepare. There's the editing and so forth. I'm lucky enough that I make my own schedule. I am not married. I don't have any kids. So I have more time in my day than, say, the average person. Yes, it gets a lot harder when I have a girlfriend and other responsibilities and things like that. I talked about it previously. I did move my mom in with me when I moved to New Jersey, so I have a few additional responsibilities there that I used to never have prior to making these videos. So while I don't have a wife and kids, I do have other responsibilities. I do have chores and upkeep of a house, so it's not like all my time is my time. But I have more time. The key thing to all of this is, I think anything that you love, you'll make time for. Some people, ask the question, how do you possibly listen to all of this music? Well, you make time if it's something that you love, and I find time to be able to do it. But I try to be very efficient in how I make these videos. I collect stuff little by little over the week and prepare, and then I film the bulk of my videos on the weekends when I do have more time, and only a few of them are actually filmed during the week. So I don't actually film every single day, but I do post every day, and that's why some of these videos I may talk about in a post and then you don't see it for a week. Either one, I haven't made it, but sometimes I've made it already and I can talk about it and it's just coming down the pipeline. All right, Mikhail Bowden asks, have you ever made a video that you were disappointed after watching? I don't think I've ever made any that I'm disappointed, but as I got more experience making these videos, as my presentation skills grew a little bit and I became more comfortable behind the camera, looking back at some of the very, very first videos where I'm much more dry in my presentation and you can clearly see that I was reading something, I keep looking off to the side in the camera. Those are ones that I kind of cringe a little bit when I watch them now, but you know, that was me growing as a presenter, as a YouTuber, someone putting this all together, so I've left them up. There were a few videos that I took down because I simply didn't like them, and I honestly don't recall what they are. Some of them I just didn't feel did very well. They got very few views. So I might have taken down about 10 of the original videos that I made. Some of those were recreated new because I knew I could do them better. Other ones just, as I said, weren't very good and I took them down. But yeah, there's some, not necessarily disappointed at the time, because if I'm disappointed at the time, it simply wouldn't be posted. And where some of these videos, I do like to film my videos start to stop, you know, all the way through with no fade ins, fade outs, or breaks in them, although sometimes I have to do that. I like to film my videos nonstop all the way through. But at the beginning of the video, to get to this point, I may have 6, 7, or 10 starts where I just don't feel comfortable enough in the flow of the delivery, and I will stop and I will restart the video. Now, I don't do it when I'm all the way through, so if you see a little fade in, fade out in the middle somewhere, usually that's because a mistake happened and I want to fix it. But at the beginning, I have to get my rhythm going, and then I do it all the way through. So you're just not seeing those mistakes from the beginning where I filter those out when I restart it. Okay, Christian Hayes asks, are you open to reviewing subscriber-created music? And I have done that a couple times already, most recent one being a band called Thunderhoof. Now, everybody seems to want to send me stuff. By the way, this is some really great sort of stoner rock music. Totally recommend it. I talked about them previously. Go to their website, Thunderhoof. Definitely worth checking out. They were nice enough to send me their whole catalog plus some other cool stuff. All right, now I'm done plugging that because I am willing to do it when I really like the music, and I did like this band a lot. A lot of people want to send me stuff, and I just ask that you send me a link to something I can stream, or tell me if it's something I can look up on, say, Apple Music, a streaming service. I will gladly check out your band, but my musical tastes are very particular, and a lot of what it is that I like about music is who's in the band. So a lot of band offshoot projects that have famous members, a lot of bands that have somebody who would become a famous member. Not everything is that way, but a lot of stuff is rooted in that regard. So for me to just simply say, sure, I'll take an album, I don't like having things in my collection that I'm never going to listen to, that I have no connection to. So I just ask that if you want me to listen to your music, please don't be upset if I tell you that it's not my cup of tea. Even if you think that it is exactly like something else I listen to, it might just not grab me a particular way. Maybe it has to do with the recording, the production, the mix on it, the lyrics in it. It could be any number of things. But yes, I'm open to reviewing subscriber-created material. Has to be a physical CD. You have to send it to me, and I would then include it on the show. I don't do just streaming. But before we even get to the point of you sending me something, let's start with the streaming. Okay, next question on here. Chris Bull asks if I make any money from YouTube. Yes, I do. I don't like to talk about it. I don't think that that's something that really should define what this channel is about. I never started it to make money, but it's certainly a nice bonus to everything that's on here. As you know, I do put in a lot of time and energy to this. So once I hit the 1,000 subscribers, and they also require you to have 4,000 hours of viewed content, when you do both of those in 1 year's time, and I did that in about 8 months when I started the channel, I was able to become monetized. So now that I'm a monetized channel, those ads that you see that play at the beginning or the middle or the end of the video, those are bringing revenue into me. Now granted, it's like 0.8 of 1 cent. It's like I have to have you view 8 times on the video for me to even make 1 penny. So it really takes a lot. For about every 1,000 views, I make $4 to $5. It's not really that much money. But I have over 1,400 videos on this channel. And so I do make a little bit of money. It is not a lot. Where I've kind of looked at it is the amount of money that I make from this covers a lot of my music habit. And yes, I do consider it a habit. Buying all my music and getting to go out and purchase a lot of CDs and things like that. This channel has made it possible for me to buy that and not have to pick and choose like I used to in the past. So I am very grateful to you viewers out there who are part of my channel that allow those ads to run so that I can get the revenue from it. And yeah, so I do make a little money from it. It'd be nice if one day I could quit the professional job of being the architect, but I think that is a long ways off. I'm nowhere near that yet. Even Pete Pardo, who has 80,000+ subscribers, I'm up in the 18 range right now. But he still works a full-time job as well. So I mean, you really got to get to over the hundreds of thousands of subscribers and stuff before you're going to make enough money that you don't have to work a professional job. So a ways off from that. All right, Mark Cusack and also No Time to Rock asks, do you ever run into copyright issues? And that's why I grouped that with the monetization. So yes, I do run into that, and I have problems with that all the time, but I sort of found some workarounds with it. One, it's why when you see me filming with Anthony in the record store, we never have music playing, because it'll get copyrighted, and then I won't make any money from those videos. So also when I go to record stores, if you ever noticed, I only ever do 7-second segments. I never really do anything longer than that. On occasion, you'll see something about 10 to 15 seconds, but usually there's no music in the background or it's so muddled you can't make it out. But when I pull something out to show you, flip it around, that's the reason that it's about 7 seconds longer if I'm spinning around. Because if there's music in the background, I found that for most every single song, with the exception of maybe Pink Floyd songs, I can do 7 seconds and it doesn't get a copyright. I don't know what that is. If like 8 seconds and over becomes a copyright issue, anything under that is not, but that's how I get around it. And so that's also why when I do my reviews of albums, a new song, any of that, I never play any of it in the video. I just figure, if you want to hear it, go check it out on a streaming platform. I used to play some in my reviews early on. Now, this was long before I was monetized, but I'm quite sure that if I tried doing any of that today, again, I would get hit with a copyright issue. And if I'm hit with the copyright issue, the whole video itself goes to, the monetization goes to them. They make the money on it. So yeah, I do come in contact with it, but I try to balance it out as best I can. Big Dave asked the question, would you ever consider doing a reaction video to a new release? That's why I put a copyright issue with this, because due to copyright issues, no. If I play any of those songs in these videos, I don't make the money from it. If I thought that doing one of those would suddenly blow up and give me, 200,000 views or something, I would do it, but most cases not. 4,000 or 5,000 views is what I get. That's awesome. I love it, but I want to make the money from it myself. I never can figure out which ones are going to be the big ones. I've got a couple of videos that have passed 50 and 60,000, and I never thought those videos would do it. But if I could, foresee what those videos would be, I would do it, because once you get into that range, it's bringing in a lot of subscribers, and I would certainly take the subscriber base for a more longer term return on investment. But ultimately, it's just not something that I find interesting. I don't watch those reaction videos. I could care less about them. I know some of you guys would like to see me do it. Maybe somewhere down the road I will, but at least right now it's just not my thing. And also, as I said, I lose the monetization on it. Okay, Dave from Cornwall, UK asked, would you ever consider going to work for another production platform as a presenter? He was talking about how much he enjoyed my presentation or how good my presentation skills are. Well, again, we relate back to the architecture aspect of this. So I went to school and I have a master's degree in architecture. So that's actually a 7-year process because the master's degree program I went to was a 3-year program. During that 7 years, they teach you how to present. They teach you how to formulate an idea, how to create an outline on what it is, how to present those ideas, making points along the way, how to bring back that idea at the end and close everything up, wrap it up nice with a bow. So I do credit my presentation skills as having learned that from architecture, which when I was starting this channel, I thought, hey, I could do a better job than some out there because I actually have the presentation skills. I would love to be picked up by a major platform. I'd love for somebody to come to me like VH1 and say, hey, you know that show, that metal show, we want to do something like that with you. I would totally get on board with it. It'd be a dream, but I don't think that's going to happen. So in the meantime, I'm building up my own brand here on this channel simply under my name, Brendan Snyder. I thought about doing something like Sea of Tranquility and creating a brand name, but I didn't want to be known as that. I wanted to be known as Brendan Snyder. Also, I know about some other instances where people have created those and then lost it because they, got together with someone, partnered with someone, and then suddenly the brand was bigger than the presenter, and the presenter was ousted for some reason, and now that brand no longer is associated with that person, and I don't ever want that to happen for me. So my brand is me, it's my name, it's who I am. You can't take that away from me, but I would certainly go do a show with someone where it was, Brendan Presents or such and such show featuring Brendan Snyder. I think that'd be pretty cool. So I don't know, if anyone out there has a production company, wants to do a show about music where I am the host on it, go ahead, contact me. I'd be totally up for it. All right, that wraps up the ones that are related to channel, and I move into personal ones, of which I've got 10 questions. Usually I have 2 or 3, so a lot of you guys came out and asked some cool questions, and they're not so personal that I don't want to answer them, but I'm happy to do it here. First one up, Will Price asks, what record stores did you work at growing up? I worked for 5 different ones. Trax Records and Tapes, that was related to or owned by the same people that owned Turtles, if you know that one. I worked for Blockbuster Music. They bought out Trax Records, and I worked for Blockbuster Music at a different time. Camelot Music, Peaches, and CD Warehouse. So those 5 places. Ron Putliktar, and again, apologize if I butchered that name, wants to know how tall I am. I am 6'2". Yes, I know it's pretty hard for you to tell because I'm always sitting on my floor. Although if you see me standing next to Anthony, you can see I'm considerably taller than he is, which is probably where that question comes from. Anthony is a shorter gentleman, but I am a pretty tall guy at 6'2", so I'm going to usually tower over most people. Willie Trotter asks, actually 4 questions here. How many guitars do you own? I own 1 physical electric guitar, this one, the G&L Rampage, which is the same model that Alice in Chains guitarist Jerry Cantrell has. So I bought this back, I think 1992 is the year of this. But I also have an acoustic bass. Prior to this, I had 3 other guitars, couple electric and actually 2 acoustic and 1 additional electric, which I got rid of at the time moving to New York. I actually gave them away to some friends. Hopefully they're getting more use out of it. A friend that was a vocalist who never had any instrumentation and was interested in learning guitar, so I gave him one. And another friend who was actually in a band that was on Artemis Records, Crossbreed, the bass player in that band, Charlie Parker, who's a really good friend of mine, different than the other guy that I talked about, Chuck Turner. But Charlie Parker, I gave to him my 12-string acoustic and my amp and a few other things. I just wanted it to go to someone that was going to get some use out of it and enjoy it. And for me, it wasn't about the money. I tried to go sell them. I was going to make a few $100. I wasn't going to make a lot. So I went ahead and gave them away. I would say at this point now, owning the house, certainly I wish I had them, but I didn't know that I was ever going to own a house. This was more than 15 years ago at this point, and I needed to get things cleaned up for my mom back where I grew up, and ultimately I chose to give them away. So right now, just the 2 guitars, the electric and the acoustic bass, but I may grow, and get some more guitars going forward. I hadn't had my guitars out in a very long time until I moved here. I just kind of had grown away from playing, but I recently broke them back out and I've been enjoying it a lot and remembering why it is that I first started playing guitar. So the next question on here, do you play any other instruments? Just guitar and bass. I mean, I noodle around on piano and other things, but no, these are just the only 2 instruments I play. Also wants to know if I drive. Yes, I do. Moving to New Jersey, I have to drive, but I've been driving since I was 16, had my license, because I grew up back in Florida where, again, you have to have a car. And what kind of car do I own? Nothing special, just a gold Honda Accord from 2005, but it is a nice car. It's a steady car, and gets me from place A to place B. So that's what I've got. Okay, Arturo Douglas asks, what bands inspired you to play guitar? I don't know that any one band did it, but I was huge into Motley Crue, and I love the song Kickstart My Heart, which I was actually, my favorite member was Nikki Sixx, so I started off with a bass and then realized that that wasn't the lead instrument. I didn't really understand the difference in the instruments and so forth, but he was my favorite, so I wanted to play bass guitar. But after talking to some friends that had a guitar and realizing that the lead instrument that I was actually enjoying was a guitar, I switched over to guitar. Guns N' Roses' song Sweet Child of Mine was one of the first songs I learned to play on guitar, loving that slash, lick or intro, to that song. Another one being Ozzy Osbourne's song Crazy Train. I love that Randy Rhoads guitar intro bit that he does. So whether those were really the ones that inspired me, I think it was just my love of music and wanting to be able to play like they played. I was never big into covering songs. I much more am interested in creating something new. So I don't really, when I sit down to noodle on the guitar, I don't really play cover songs. I just play my own stuff. All right, Andrew Bass asks, what is that white cone behind you? Yeah, that one right there. I have made a full video on this, by the way, and you can check it out. And if I remember, I'm going to leave a link for you in the description. But that is a Bluetooth speaker. It's an $800 Bluetooth speaker that I was given to do a review on. And I just think it looks so cool that I've left it sitting there. That trunk used to be where I kept box sets, like my most current ones. So that right now would have contained everything from the 2022 year, and then everything from the 2023 year would go on there for the next year. That's how I used to do it. But once I got that, I just really liked it. And of course, it's eye-catching conversation starter, because a lot of you guys ask me what the heck that thing is. But yeah, it's a 360-degree Bluetooth speaker that is phenomenal sounding, by the way. I mean, for a single speaker that is 360 degrees, when you turn that thing on, I can hear it through the whole house, and it sounds beautiful. All this idea about needing 4 different speakers and subwoofers and everything else, this thing right here will create that. So it's a pretty cool thing, both in sound and design. It's just very high end, something I wouldn't normally be able to afford on my own. But since it was given to me, and there's another perk from YouTube, is being given things to review for you guys. I get those items for free and I get to keep them. That's one of the agreements in it. So I get a little bit of a bonus that way as well. I've gotten to partner up and do some reviews on t-shirts, so I've gotten a lot of extra rock shirts. I get the occasional album to review. I don't have a lot of that yet, but I'd like to get into that some more. I get some electronics. I've been asked to review computer desk chairs, gaming chairs, furniture. A new one is metal jewelry. I may be doing that one. So I try to stick to things that I think would be interesting to you guys on the channel that you may actually want to go out and buy, and not just do everything that is given to me, because what point would it be if it doesn't relate to music? Kenneth James wants to know, what do you do for fun outside of musical interests? I've touched on this one before. It's not much different from that if you've heard it, but I do like to draw and paint. I have art hung around my house that I did myself. I love going to museums. I'm very big into history. That's why I talk a lot about the bands the way I do. I'm always telling you what album it was, who worked on it and recorded it, when members came in and came out, that kind of stuff. For me, the history of things is very fascinating, both historically of our country, the world, everything like that, down to the music itself. So I love museums. I also love exploring space in terms of reading up on it, keeping it, up to date on things that like SpaceX is doing and these other new space companies that are out there trying to make their ways to the moon and Mars and so forth. But I have interests like that outside of music. But yeah, the number one thing is I'm going to come home, I'm going to listen to music. When I have free time, I'm going to run to a record store. But if I've already done that, then I'm going to do some of these other things. Justin D asked the question, tell us more about Noodle. So he's a brown tabby cat. Even though he looks gray, they call him a brown tabby cat. He does have some brown hair in there. He's 7 years old. He is a boy. Very active. He loves to play. He follows me everywhere, which I actually think is the most adorable thing. I call him my little shadow because if I get up and I walk out of the room, he follows me. If I go downstairs, he follows me. He's just always keeping an eye on me. And one of my favorite traits about him is he's very schedule oriented. If it's dinner time and I have not eaten, even if he's eaten, he will meow until I get up and fix food. As soon as I fix some food for myself, he lays down and relaxes. But he keeps me on schedule. I'm never late leaving for work because he knows what time I have to be in the shower to stay on schedule. And if I'm not, I'm playing on my phone, he lets me know. And if I haven't gone downstairs to put on my shoes to leave, he meows at me to tell me that as well. So very, very cool trait about this cat. For those of you that are only dog people, that have never actually had a cat or lived with a cat, they've got so much personality, so much life in them that they're really, really interesting creatures that go far beyond all those cat memes and everything that's out there. And Noodle is that cat for me. I call him Noods, N-O-O-D-S for short, but he's got lots of nicknames like Noodlekins and Neuteronomy and Nudiscophiles, and you name it, I've named it to him. So there you go. That is 30 viewer questions that you guys provided that I've just answered. A little bit of everything from starting off with the music related, moving into the channel, and wrapping up with some personal stuff. So hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully you're glad you asked those questions with the answers that I gave you on it. Feel free to comment on those sort of things in the comments below, and we'll talk about that sort of stuff. But all in all, let me just say thank you guys. I really do appreciate all your support. I'm glad to have you as part of my channel, and for us to be able to interact and do this stuff together. I enjoy meeting you when I'm out, so if you do see me in a record store or somewhere, feel free to come up and say hi. All right, everyone, take care, have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.